All right, we're going to talk about Paddy Gower's documentary right now, Paddy Gower on Booze. And on the line, someone I know quite well, actually. In fact, I'm going to confess right now, we're related. This is my cousin, Brett, and he's got a great story to tell about his own issues with alcohol. And Brett's bravely agreed to come on today. So thanks a million, Brett, for talking to us.
Oh, you're welcome, Leanne. I must admit, we've spoken so many times over the years, and right this moment, I'm quite nervous.
Yeah, it's a bit mean of me, isn't it, really? What a thing to do.
Fine.
Especially after the family funeral yesterday.
Yeah, well, it's about the only time we all get together anymore, I think, is funerals. So, sad occasion, but I'm sure only Val will be resting in peace now.
Oh, yeah. No, it was a nice send-off. So, Brett, you've had a chance to look at Paddy Gower's documentary, and what did you make of it? Did you think it was useful?
Yeah, I've watched all his series on the stuff that he's done, and I felt this was probably his best one. It was interesting to be able to go through his journey while he was doing the documentary, which was not the sort of purpose was for him to find out that he had a massive drinking problem, but really to highlight what goes on in New Zealand. So it was really fascinating, and there was a lot of stuff that really took me back to my own drinking days, and I thought it was a great documentary.
How did drink kind of get a hold of you? Where did that start for you?
Yeah, that's really. I know for sure that the first time I got really, really drunk, I was about 10, and I had gone to visit my dad for the day, and he had a cask of wine sitting in a sort of cabinet, and I pulled the tab and stuck my mouth under it and had a swig, and I thought didn't like the taste of it, but immediately loved the effect. And so I kept sneaking back, and poor old Dad had to deliver me back because, Mum and Dad were separated. He had to deliver me back home, and I was absolutely legless at 10.
At 10.
And having to go to school the next day with a hangover, which was really unusual. I felt terrible. That was my first experience, but I didn't really like the taste of it early on, and I was probably, later than a lot of people I see now, but probably 15 or 16 when I started to drink, and I always drank for the effect, nothing else. I drank for effect, so I was no connoisseur. I think I had a wine collection for about a day and a half, and then I drank it all, and and that's why I drank. I drank to escape, I guess.
So was it a way of, a bit like how Paddy said, he felt like he looked funny and he felt a bit shy. So did it give you confidence too when you drank?
Oh, absolutely. I grew up, even though, I'm probably known as an extrovert, I grew up as a really awkward kid. I really felt that there was something wrong, there was something broken, that I wasn't like the other kids, that if only people knew what was going on my head, I'd get locked up. And what I found is that when I drank, I felt how other people looked to me. So it was a really cool feeling. The confidence came in, and I thought I was funny, and I could dance. I could really converse with other people, I thought, at that level. But I must admit, there were a couple of moments in the documentary where Paddy was watching himself when he was drunk, and I could almost feel the cringe he was going through. Just such a terrible feeling.
I found that interesting too.
Yeah.
I thought that was the bit that hit me the most, actually. It struck me that it's like someone's inhabited your body.
Yes, yeah, and I've seen it so often, and I know towards the end of my drinking, one drink, and it felt like a switch had flicked. And I went from sort of happy-go-lucky to bitter, chip on the shoulder, nasty, mouthy. I could feel it. And there was one point that Paddy talked about, which I think is the worst place to be in life, and that's standing at the crossroads. You can't live with it, and you can't live without it. And I really related to those moments. I could see it, that he knew there was something going on there, but he didn't want to do anything about it because, he was so addicted to alcohol, whatever his journey was. He needed it so much, and he loved it so much. It was this love-hate relationship.
Yeah. I thought he was so honest because he kept saying, I don't want to.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's, because I used to, when I first knew that I had a problem and I first started coming to terms with it, I would promise people, no, I'm not going to drink. I'm not going to drink, because I'd be going away or whatever, and I'd promise my family, no, I'm not going to drink. But I knew all the time I was going to drink. I wanted to drink. And at first I was saying that I wasn't just to please other people, but I couldn't bear the thought of... I can remember meeting a person when I was about 19, a young woman, and I was chatting to her. We were all a whole bunch of people out at dinner. And she was drinking water, and I said, don't you drink? And she said, no. And I remember asking her, how do you enjoy yourself? And it was a genuine question. I really thought, how could you have fun? I mean, what do you do? And then that was the end of the conversation. I found somebody else to chat to.
Yeah, right. Someone who drank.
Probably a little confronting.
It is. It happens all the time though, because if I choose to go out, I've been pressured all the time because I can't really hold alcohol.
Right,
So I've never been able to drink that much, like 2, and I'm reeling, and so often I would go out and I pretend to, because I'm not I get really bored at parties after a couple of hours because most people go in and get sloshed, and I'm kind of like, right, well, all the good chat's gone now. Everyone's gone way past my level, so I'd start drinking water, but I'd disguise it and say, oh no, it's a G&T, because they'd say, what do you got there? What do you got, eh? And I'm like, well, I've got a vodka, or a gin. And they go, oh, that's good, because they really hate it when you say you're drinking lemon, lime and bitters. They just don't like it.
Well, people feel awkward, I think, and not so much now. I don't even really notice it, but early on I was very self-aware that I wasn't drinking. And in fact, I avoided many, many situations. And I can remember I gave up for a whole month once. And, because in the lead up to me stopping drinking, I stopped and started a lot. I was always giving up. And I had been a whole month without a drink. And so I thought, I'd been invited to a 21st birthday party, and I thought, well, I'll celebrate with it was a champagne breakfast. Well, that one drink led to a 9-hour bender.
Oh.
And I can remember one of my best friends, as I stood there with a beer in my hand or whatever, coming up to me and he said, oh, so good to have you back. We thought we'd lost you. And I always remember that line thinking, but you see it everywhere, Leanne. How often on the TV when there's been a good game of rugby and the commentator say, oh, well, I bet you're going to have a couple of quiets tonight. It's just everywhere in our culture that to be a real man or a real person, you have to drink, which is kind of sad.
Yeah, whereas what you're actually doing was losing yourself. You weren't actually back. You were going back down the slippery slope, weren't you?
Well, what it said to me, particularly that day, I thought, well, I'll have I know that I'm not an alcoholic because I've just given up for a month, so I'll have a glass of champagne. And that led to a 9-hour bender. Well, there's not a lot of control in that. And, I could see that in Paddy today when he was talking about after the crew had gone, he stayed on drinking. That was always me. And I was a very similar drinker in that I could drink or I could not drink, but I couldn't social. I was a social drinker for about 20 minutes, and then it was all on. But I could go 3 days and I wouldn't drink. It was horrific because not only did I have an alcohol problem, but I also had a life problem. I didn't know how to live without drink. I didn't know what to do with myself. So I would anxiously sit at home, counting down the hours to when I'd start drinking again. A horrible way to live.
Like any addiction, though, and it's not something you'd wish on anyone. I mean, I think we've all got demons, and we've all got, you're so not alone, because, I know a lot of people who don't drink now because same deal, like they would have one and it was all on for hours and hours and hours. And there was an interesting bit last night. I wonder if you saw it in the show. I know you watched it this morning, and there was someone at an AA meeting, and I think she'd said, I didn't know myself, the person who'd crashed the car and then was biting the police officer as he was trying to apprehend me, because she was trashed. And that's what took her to that low point where she had to seek help.
I absolutely relate to that. I was not... Paddy said that when he drank, he felt like the real personality came out, or words to that effect. Whereas for me, I was always often horrified the next day about things that I'd said and things that I'd done. And the person who drank was not who I was. I didn't know who I was. I was completely lost. I had no idea who Brett was. And that was kind of sad. Yet I felt compelled to drink because it made me feel better. But in the end, the thing that made me feel better turned on me. It really did. I'd gone, I see a lot of young kids, and they go out and party and have a great time, and they scull a few beers and stuff like that. Now, hopefully a lot of them will just grow up and move on. But, for a lot, they don't. And I was one of those people. The people that I liked to hang around with were people who drank heavily. I wasn't interested in hanging around with what I call boring people. But it robbed me of so much because I did nothing other than drink. What a boring life. And I didn't see that until I stopped.
Listening to you, I consider that we're pretty close. And I'm hearing stuff that I'm thinking, I had no idea, quite where you were at. And I sort of feel really bad that I wasn't kind of there to help you, because I didn't know, when you were young and when we were growing up, all I saw of you was this. I didn't know you were struggling with all these things. I thought that you were just this really outgoing, fantastic guy who loved dressing up and like Mick Jagger and, and how much, and all those fun times. Yeah, sorry. But, we used to have a lot of fun, and I always thought you were the life and soul without, and this was obviously not when you were drinking, so I always thought you had always had that side in you anyway of being, outgoing and fun, but you felt that the only way you could get there was through drink, which is totally understandable, because how many people say, "Oh, I'm going to do something, but a Dutch courage first."
I used to have to drink to go out drinking. I couldn't just go out and walk into a pub and start drinking. So this whole idea of preloading was what they call it now. I just used to call it have a few bourbons or whatever to get the courage to go out.
Oh, really?
I would do. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I had no idea.
Myself as, but that's because I hid it well.
I can't believe it.
Very, really easy to put the mask on and say, "Hey, I'm the fun, happy-go-lucky guy. I'm the guy, the clown who'll do the funny thing for the attention." But I did that because inside I was, I would describe as not a happy person. And it's taken me a long time to figure that, we're a nation of overthinkers. We're a planet of overthinkers. We spend what I figured out that, I would walk into a room and I'd think that everybody was staring at me, for example. I mean, how conceited is that? Most people are too busy worrying about themselves to even notice you walk into the room. So I would drink to be able to walk into that room so that I could think people were all staring at me when they were sitting there worrying about their own problems. So it was kind of, a bit of a paradox, really.
Yeah, self-conscious.
Very self-conscious. Very, very self-conscious. And I think to a certain extent, a lot of people are, drink or no drink. We worry about what other people think about us when it doesn't really matter.
No.
I've got to say now that what other people think of me is none of my business. I really don't care.
Yeah, that's good.
Most of the time. I mean, if I misbehave, then obviously I care what Melanie thinks.
Mm-hmm.
But normally it just does not bother me. I'm not overly concerned with what other people think about me. Yet, growing up, and the more I launched myself into the drinking, I've got some absolute horror stories of the stuff that I did when I drank and the remorse that I lived with afterwards.
And so many people will be listening going, yep, I hear you, because, we've all been there. And like, even me, I can feel like if I don't know, if I can feel things changing in me, and if I've got something on my mind, or I'm sad or I'm angry, all it does is just totally exacerbate it for me and make me so much more angry when I drink or whatever,
Yeah.
So it's a really tricky one. And sometimes I go, oh, that just made me feel so much worse. Even just one glass, and like, it's really, and especially as you get older, because you can't stomach it. Your system's just going, oh, don't choke me. But I want to ask you, how did you get to the point that you thought, right, I can't just stop for a few days or a month and what have you? Like, what turned you to becoming completely sober, and how did you get help for that?
For me, it was this gradual realisation. As I tried to stop drinking, and you saw that in Paddy's documentary, the thought of stopping drinking just wasn't there. But as I tried to stop drinking, I ran a few experiments, and one of them was I was going down to a good mate's place to watch a rugby test, and now they all drank, big drinkers, and so I think subconsciously that was part of the plan anyway, go down and hang out with my mates. And I said, right, I'm only going to drink 2 beers, right? That's it. I'm going to limit myself to 2 beers while I'm watching the rugby. And then this mental obsession started. And I thought, wow, if I'm only going to have 2, I'll get the biggest cans I can find. Or should I go for strength rather than volume?
Yeah, brilliant.
And then I thought, well, I'll have 1 in the first half and 1 in the second half. Should I scull them both up front and get the kick? Yeah. And hopefully it lasts. And as I was driving to this rugby match, I thought, I wonder if normal people think like this. I wonder if people who can have a glass of wine or half a glass of wine and tip the rest out, I wonder if they think like I do.
Yeah.
And I've sort of learned now that, no, they don't. I had this mental obsession coupled with this physical allergy.
Yeah.
So it was the 1st of July, 1989, and I was off to a conference in down country. Again, I'd promised my family I was not going to drink, and in the back of my mind, there was nothing better than a conference. Free alcohol, went on tour, stayed on tour, all that, classic Kiwi stuff. And I turned up to this conference, and we were greeted with a happy hour of cocktails. And I thought, no, there's no way I'm having a cocktail because that would be drinking. I opted for a beer. And I picked the beer up, and I was halfway through it, and I had this incredible piece of insight. And I still remember exactly where I was standing. And I saw really clearly that the only person that I was fooling was me. I wasn't fooling anybody else.
Right.
And that if I had this beer, it would be the same old, because my life had become so repetitive, so repetitive, same old bad habits. And I put the beer down and I walked away from it. Now, that was my last drink ever. If I had have known it was my last drink, it certainly wouldn't have ended like that. I would have gone out with a hiss and a roar.
You would have kept going.
But it was that piece of insight that I thought, wow, who am I fooling? So for the next 3 months, I didn't drink, and my life became worse.
Worse.
By the end of the 3 months, yeah, because when I wasn't drinking, I was left with me. I was left with my thinking. I was left with this person that I didn't like, and craving alcohol like nothing else. It's pretty much. I still had the mental obsession. I just wasn't kicking in that physical allergy by having that first drink. And what I mean by physical allergy, when I had that first drink, I never knew where it was going to go. It started this unquenchable thirst. And so 3 months down the track, I thought, I'm either going to drink again. In fact, my ex-wife said to me, you may as well be drinking because you were happier. And
all right.
So again, at that crossroads, what do I do? And that's when I reached out for help. Now, for me, I rang Alcoholics Anonymous. I didn't know what else to do, and that changed my life. It really did, because AA is a program about living. It's about really getting comfortable in your own skin. So that was the beginning of quite a different journey, and being surrounded by other like-minded people who were there to support and hang out. And I had to make a lot of changes in my life, an awful lot of changes, some of which were really hard.
I'll bet. I mean, but wouldn't the hardest thing of all actually be going along to your first AA meeting? Yeah. You know?
I thought, what a loser. I thought maybe we'd all sit around with wine bottles and paper bags and maybe learn how to drink. I kind of hoped in the back of my mind that I'd learn how to drink like normal people.
Oh, okay.
And I wasn't really sure what AA was about. And what I did catch on to fairly quickly was that I didn't have to drink today. That's it, just right now, right this moment. For me, it was about staying really present in the moment early on, because, I'd come from this place where if I was travelling, I'd have to ring ahead and ask them to clear the minibar out, because I would obsess over it. I could almost hear the alcohol in the minibar talking to
you.
Come on, yeah, just one. Come on, one's not going to hurt you. And I'd gone from that to, that's when I first stopped drinking, to the only thing I see at a minibar now is the chocolate. But that's a different story.
That's a different addiction.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, my life's like 7 boiling pots with 6 lids. You've always sort of got to keep an eye on things as they boil over, but a lot more balanced.
Yeah, you did amazing. You did tell me, I remember chatting a few years ago, and you were saying that it was a pretty dreadful feeling being at the very bottom, or you felt you'd reached the lowest of the low.
Oh, yeah.
Boy, and there's been some criticism of Paddy's show, because the critics have said, look, all good and all, and good to talk about it, but it looked like it was so easy for you to quit. And they're saying, what about getting the cameras on perhaps a month down the track when it's only been 1 month that you've stopped, and maybe you're starting to get tempted again? So do you think that's a valid point? Because there must be several lows that you go through.
Yeah. Well, everybody has their own journey. That's what I've learned. And for some people, stopping drinking is easy. The majority that I hung out with, it wasn't. And some of those rock bottoms were horrific. And my rock bottom was nowhere near as bad as some of the other people that I've been in recovery with over the years. But for me, it was the humiliation and the degrading behaviour and all the other things that slowly built up, and I knew that I had it. And the fact that when I stopped drinking, people said, what's happened? You're such a nice person now. And These are people close to me. I could turn on the charm when I needed to, but these were people who were close to me. I was a rat bag, a real rat bag when I drank. And it wasn't just drink either, Leanne. It was anything that took me out of my head.
Right.
Anything that could stop me thinking. If you had said, go home, roll up 2 banana leaves and a bag of tea leaves and smoke it, and you'll get wasted, I would have been there doing it 5 minutes later. I had no fear when it came to, no matter what it was.
To trying stuff.
I was very experimental, and the more it took me away from my thinking. But Paddy's got his own story, right? And maybe he is a guy that can just stop drinking. But what I saw in Paddy, in his documentary, was a guy that needs to be liked, a guy that needs, even in his language, hey bro, hey,
right.
There's this need to be
Popular.
seen to be cool or popular. And I wonder if that will come back and bite him at some point, because for many people, if you're a non-drinker, it's different now. When I first stopped drinking, I was 26. So all my friends were drinkers. Everybody I ever knew was a drinker. And so I had to ditch a lot of them because the pressure early on was, oh, what's wrong with you, mate? There was a lot of that. I had a couple of really close friends who, funnily enough, are both in recovery now, who just, loved me for who I was. They didn't care whether I drank or not. But some people were deeply offended. What's wrong with you? It was almost, what is wrong with you? But they didn't see the horrific lows and the depression and the not being able to get out of bed and the horrific hangovers and the not being able to participate in life because you were so sick. They never saw any of that. So, maybe Paddy will hit some of that, and maybe he won't. Who knows? I can't speak for him, but I felt that he did an honest attempt at where he's at. And if he found it easy to stop drinking, there's probably no point saying anything else. But, the reality is for a lot of people, it's, you imagine that poor young guy who's claimed to fame has been able to scull 6 beers at once.
Yeah.
Very hard to walk away from that if that's your identity. I felt that was quite sad because he seemed like a really thoroughly decent guy. But to me, he'll be, I've seen them, the guy that's 60 sitting in the corner of the bar on his own, reliving stories from his 20s. Don't know.
I agree. I think that was really sad. I felt so sorry for that guy. I thought he was such a nice,
lovely guy,
human, and you're right, that's his identity. So is he just going to be encumbered with that forever until perhaps someone helps him? It's awful. And I was
just going to say that my best mate, he had that reputation. He was hard living, fast driving, drug taking, party animal. And I can remember thinking, wow, you've got this massive reputation. How are you ever going to walk away from that? But he did. And he's over 20 years sober now and clean. He walked away from it all. So, anybody can do it. But it's, for some, it's just not easy.
It's courageous, is what it is, to walk away.
It's courageous. It's desperate. There's a lot of words that you can call it, but most importantly, it's life-changing. Genuinely life-changing. And I'm coming up 33 years without a drink, and I don't even think about it. It's just not even. And I don't mind that other people drink. And like you, I know when to leave a party. It's when the person's 2 inches from your face, spitting all over you, telling you that they know somebody who's got a drinking problem or whatever that is. I know when it's time to leave, but I don't begrudge people having a good time. Many people can drink normally and go to bed and have a normal day the next day. But that just wasn't me.
Yeah. And do you would have talked to people about this, I suppose, like psychologists, I guess, or even people at AA. And do you think it's genetic? It's a terrible thing to say when you're in a family, but is that a lot of is that a lot of the grounding? Is that how it all starts?
I think it's been very genetic, and certainly with the males in our family. I've got a son who's 3 years sober now, and having to live through his addiction was really hard. But I also knew that there's nothing I could do about it. He would find his own way, one way or another, either to a happier, sober life, or death, which is the other option. Many people find it just too hard, and that's the tragedy. And of course, these things never get reported in the statistics of drugs and alcohol. We get overdose or liver failure or whatever, but we don't often get the true drinking or drugging yourself to death, where the only option is to end it. And I think that happens a hell of a lot in this country, where people get to a point and they don't think there is a way out when there is. And for a lot of people, it's just being too scared to ask for help. And there's so much help out there. And, for every person that you meet that's clean, sober, or doesn't work 200 hours a week, or whatever their addiction is, or doesn't gamble on the horses anymore, or, there's thousands of addictions.
Food?
Food, yeah.
It's probably one of mine.
Yeah, one of mine too.
I love it.
Yeah, but there's always help out there, always. And often these people have said, I need to help, I need to ask. And that's what I'd encourage people to do. Even if you're only slightly concerned, I sort of have this theory now that if you have to constantly think about whether something's a problem or not, then it's a problem. If you're constantly deciding it, because I don't think people who, eat well-balanced meals or can have a glass of wine with dinner obsessively think about whether it's healthy or unhealthy. I think they just think, well, okay, I'll have a glass of wine with dinner, and that's the end of it. Oh, that was a nice glass of wine. I'll share that with a friend. But, for me, it was always, I think I've got a problem. Should I do something about it? Yeah, I'll do something about it. How should I do something about it? It's just very tiring.
Oh, but it sounds it. It's like anything that, you're struggling with. Like, there's a lot of depression in this country, a lot.
Yes.
Our mental health is probably, I think, at its probably lowest level ever. That's just my opinion, and there's probably not enough resources for that. But certainly in terms of, what a fantastic organisation Alcoholics Anonymous is, isn't it?
Oh, it's life-changing, and I don't speak for Alcoholics Anonymous, but it was instrumental in me getting comfortable with teaching me about life. So, because I'd already stopped drinking when I went into AA, which is very unusual. But I was miserable. And it wasn't till I got into AA and that my life changed. So, one of the great things about AA is that when you get sober, it's about helping others, being there, if I had to ring that phone line and the guy at the other end said, no, sorry, I can't see you, I'm going bowling tonight.
Right.
It would have been a different story. But literally within half an hour of making the phone call, he was on my doorstep and not forcing anything down my throat, just told me his story. And, I wonder how many people related to Patrick Gower's story last night. When this guy told me his story, I related to it. I thought, wow. And we were generations apart, from a different culture. I could go on the differences. But when he talked about drinking and how he drank, I identified, wow, you're telling my story.
Wow.
And that was the magic. He was there for me when I needed it. Yeah.
Well, you've done incredibly it's what, did you say 30 years at least since you...
33 in a couple of weeks, yeah.
Amazing. And you can go out with your partner, with your wife, and you don't mind if she drinks, you're not sitting there struggling with any issues over that.
No. In fact, I've got a lot of friends that drink, and there's not one of them that I would say has a problem with it.
Okay.
But I don't sit there thinking, you've got a problem anyway. It's none of my business. You've only got a problem if you think you've got a problem. That's, how you drink and participate in whatever you participate in is really none of my business, unless you want help. And then I'm in boots and all.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely, because you've got a great story to share with people, and you turned it around, which is a cliche, but it's so true. And
it gave me a life that I didn't have. It's that simple, and I probably wouldn't have had.
And Brett, so tonight Paddy's got a follow-up, which is an hour-long panel discussion, and he's got some experts, and I think they're going to be talking about reforms and things in this country, like to perhaps be more strict with our alcohol regulations, and I think there's room for that. Do you think that we could, there could be some changes made? I'm not asking you to be a lawmaker, but
Ooh, yeah.
But could we perhaps raise the drinking age, or maybe, in Iceland they put in a curfew for young people, which would go down like a cup of cold sick, but to use a crass term. But, I suppose there are measures that could be done that we're not doing here.
Yeah, look, I think that it's a cultural issue, that this whole binge drinking, do the yardie, crate day, you're not a bloke unless you can do all these things, is part of the culture of this country, and often we put stuff in that's at the bottom of the cliff. So for me, it's about education. It's about bringing up young men and women who are comfortable with who they are, who maybe, I remember being in France, and the kids have a glass of wine with lunch. I don't know what their alcoholism rate is, but I think there's a lot of education. There's a lot of sort of normalised. I think as soon as you put, for me, anything that was prohibited always intrigued me. I thought, wow, I wonder why that's illegal. Going to have a crack at that.
Well, that's true though, isn't it? Yeah.
It's true.
We're all like that.
Yeah, wow, why is that off limits? Really need to sort of put my toe over the line there.
Need to try this because we've been told we can't.
Yes, exactly. And so as soon as you start prohibiting, then you drive things underground, and you see what happens when you drive things underground. We need to be right from, even as parents, right from day one, because we become very conditioned. So, when a baby is born and it's learning to walk, gets up, falls over, hits its head, cry, but it doesn't look around the room and think, I've just made a dick of myself, I'm never walking again. That's it, I'm going to go and sit in the corner. But if you think about it, and then, you do something at 5 years old, Mum says, well, you're never going to be a lawyer, are you? Just little things, and it's innocent, but it's so impactful. And then we have these kids that are uncomfortable with who they are, really uncomfortable with who they are. And then, oh, look at this magic stuff. This makes me feel like other people look. And then away we go. And then, particularly as a rugby nation, and I don't blame rugby, but it's this sort of rugby racing beer mentality.
Totally.
That if you can scull a jug in 4 seconds, you're a legend. And for me, they were my heroes, the guys that when I went to, I did about 3 orientations or 4 orientations, and I never went to uni. But I loved orientation week.
Oh, yeah, who doesn't?
Particularly down in Dunedin.
So
the people that I admired could do the jug in 4 seconds. And now I think, wow, there's a few brain cells getting west. And a lot of these kids settle down and become really sensible people. But there's just as many who continue in that way.
Yeah.
I still hear, I still see it everywhere. Oh, boy, he can pack away the booze. Or he's, and I just think, wow, what a thing to have on your CV.
Yeah. on your gravestone, you can pack away the booze.
Yeah. Well, I did irreparable damage to my liver. I still fail the liver enzyme test.
Do you?
So there are other issues mental health issues that I've struggled with because of the way that I dealt to myself in those early years.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah.
So
there is a cost at some point, and I don't think we're always aware of that.
Yeah. I think you've been incredible, Brett. I just cannot believe we've spoken for nearly an hour.
Oh, have we?
We have.
Gosh. Sorry, I feel sorry for your listeners.
No, I think most people would have really been riveted. I think you're incredible. I'm proud to be. I'm proud to be related to you. Actually,
I'm proud to be related to you. I must admit, I was very nervous because when we usually chat, it's very different than this sort of formal interview style. But look, thanks for having me on. And
sorry, cuz.
And I'm looking forward to Paddy's program tonight. It'll be interesting to see what comes of it.
Yeah, me too. I think it's going to be interesting, and I just think it's really healthy to start chatting. And I'm going to give out some phone numbers too for, drug helplines and our AA and what have you. Because
brilliant!
I reckon just get them out because. And why should we just have 1 month a year, like a dry July or whatever? And that seems to me that is something for people who are really, really worried about their drinking. So they stop for a month and then like, right, well, I've cleaned myself out. Now let's rock back into it again. Where's the tequila?
Yeah, most people have swapped it now and they do, I won't eat McDonald's for a month or something like that because they don't want to do the drink one.
Yeah,
but
I know.
There's one thing that I will say that is, if you think you've got a problem, check out the help. And if it's not for you, then fair enough. But if you don't check it out, you'll never know. If you're seriously worried, it doesn't hurt to talk to somebody else about it.
Exactly. And then you can make your own calls. And if you're feeling like you're really struggling, then you know that you can take the next step. Yeah. Which is important, eh? But
hey, great to catch up. Kelsey.
Listen. Brilliant, Brett. You're a truly fine man, and I cannot believe how much I cannot believe I'm related to someone who's so sensible, and he speaks so well on the radio.
Ask Melanie. She'll probably deny that one. Yeah.
And you enjoy your trip to Scotland, hey, later in the week,
looking forward to seeing my son and my grandchildren. So
what a great thing to do.
Yeah.
So hey, take care and thank you so much for bearing your soul, mate. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Leah.
Thank you. Bye bye.